Hello everybody, this is another installment of What Is. The topic today is what is Satanism? The problem of Satan. It is extremely difficult to summarize the entirety of satanic belief because just like there are many sects of Christianity that say how to interpret the Bible and what to prioritize while interpreting the Bible, for example. Sects of Satanism does the same thing with the entity or title Satan. We'll get into why I say entity or title in a second. But basically, in defining Satanism, we first have to define Satan, which in itself is a very difficult task. And in interpreting the word Satan, we can see why somebody would probably want to be a Satanist in the first place, like some of the positive implications of being a Satanist and what that can help you learn. The origin of the title. So, Ha-Satan is a Hebrew title for an angel. In other words, one of God's messengers. The word literally means the adversary. The function of the adversary was to challenge people's faith in God. That was an essential function to not just the Jewish faith, but it is an essential function for all faith to endure, is challenging that faith and coming out the other side, overcoming that challenge. So, in the Jewish worldview, the adversarial nature of this angel is necessary in function in order to find the true path towards God. Now, to the Satanist, they take that title like a little more literally, meaningfully. Some Satanists say they themselves are Satan, that Satan challenges usually social norms or ignorance. So that is kind of a Luciferian bent on the satanic word, which is one reason why, even though some people say they're separate entities, other people say Satan and Lucifer are the same. The social aspect of challenge also kind of puts Satan in line with the devil, especially some interpretations of Satan that bring Satan more in line with nature. Although, again, Satan and the devil can be separate entities and often are. So, in this we see that there is a common thread to the word or title or entity Satan that is kind of implicit or explicit in how people interpret Satan in their worldview or life. Types of Satanism. So, usually when people talk about Satanism, they either mean specifically LaVeyan Satanism or theistic Satanism generally. But there are more than those binaries of Satanism. For secular Satanism, LaVeyan was among one of the first. Although a lot of brands of philosophical Satanism came after that. The Temple of Satan is an example of philosophical Satanism that is also very political. They have a lot of left-leaning views. If you've seen the board condemning beating children, that was from that group. Rational Satanism is a bent on secular Satanism that is a lot more scientific in nature. From what I can find, it's very hard to find rational Satanism sources on the internet, and the books are expensive, so I don't know that much about it. For theistic or spiritual Satanism, a lot of Satanists are either polytheistic or have a pagan slant, or they might be pantheistic, most of the time equating Satan with nature, or saying like Satan is the highest form of being or something along those lines. A minority are also Gnostic Satanists, which is a mix of Gnosticism and Satanism, and is usually a form of adversarial spirituality. There's also Luciferian Satanism. It mixes Satanism and Luciferianism, which, for the record, those are different. I'll talk about Luciferianism a little bit more in its own installment. Demolatry and Setianism. People often confuse these either as theistic Satanism, or the practitioners sometimes are also Satanists in consideration or name. Not all demolators or Setians consider themselves Satanists. Setianism is a branch off of LaVeyan Satanism. The founder believed that Set and Satan are the same entity, but Satan is a corruption of the name Set. And most demolators are either pantheistic Satanists or are polytheistic and recognize Satan as a significant entity, if not the supreme entity, if that makes sense. What are some common practices? So, a lot of Satanists use ritual, not all of them, but a vast majority of both atheistic, theistic, and just generally Satanists, such as ritual, and magic, in language or in action. Some theistic Satanists use prayer, to promote personal growth and self-care. LaVey actually has a book called The Satanic Rituals, and that's basically just an entire book of psycho-theater in different languages. So that's one way Satanists practice their beliefs. I noticed that many Satanists have a great respect for life. Some of them give up meat or kill animals themselves so they know that the meat was sourced responsibly, because in general Satanists don't like to waste things. A lot of them are very empathetic. They don't like when animals suffer, but also Satanists aren't barred from eating meat. They're just taught to respect life. Satanists usually employ demons or work with demons. This can be psychological, or they can have a literal relationship with the demon to encourage growth and personal kind of care in their life. Most satanic practices are very similar to Western ceremonial magic and neo-paganism. And generally, there is also a value of rationality, intellectualism, and scientific studies in Satanism, as well as it's thought to explain how the physical, natural world works. For further reading, these are some of the most useful books I have found. I will give a warning that if you research a lot of satanic resources, it's often connected to a lot of political slants that might be troublesome. And there are a lot of satanic cults as well. So really do use your logic. Be mindful of that. If you want resources that are not as political, read Darkgate, Key to the Left-Hand Path, that actually explains how to look for cults. The Satanic Narratives is also one of the least political secular Satanist works out there. Some forms of Satanism, like the Satanic Temple, you're not going to separate that from their political ideology. The Church of Satan also has a lot of right-wing kind of ideology steeped in their philosophy, so do know that in researching Satanism, you are going to have to be mindful of some of the political aspects as well. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see on this channel, consider subscribing at least. I try to post a new video every other Saturday, and I certainly hope to see you around.